You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support the show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
It is Monday, March 27th, 2017. My name is Michael Brooks on a Michael Monday, and this is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Will Menaker from Chapo Trap House. Can Democrats stop being corporate dum-dums? Follow Bernie Sanders. Call for Medicare for all now. In light of the massive GOP healthcare fail of last week, but don't worry, they have many other plans to make America poorer, sicker, and dumber, and they're working on it. The Trump budget's coming next. Massive tax handouts to the rich on the way. Massive investments in the carbon economy on the way. One leading light of America's mining industry says he supports the Trump administration's goals to get rid of environmental protections, but that the president should go easy on promising jobs coming back. Easy up on that one. More carbon dioxide, great. Mountaintop removal, great. Jobs, Massive civilian casualties in U.S. airstrikes in Mosul put a halt to the new IS incursion in Iraq, or rather the new incursion against IS in Iraq. Not only was the meeting with Angela Merkel really awkward, apparently Donald Trump handed her a bill that Germany owes to NATO.
It's called diplomacy.
It's called diplomacy. We're not playing around anymore. And Vladimir Putin sticks his neck into elections in France as Goldman Sachs says that a Marie Le Pen presidency is possible. And Jewish activists protest AIPAC, calling for an end to siege and occupation, largest protests that the far-right pro-Likud lobby organization has ever faced. And clean jobs are providing more positions than dirty energy jobs. All that and much, much more on today's Majority Report. Had a very, very busy weekend, and part of the new thing, something new that I have to keep track of is an awesome course that I'm about to start on Skillshare. Skillshare, are you a professional who's looking for a leg up in work, or would you just love to learn new things? Or are you looking to do your job better? Do you want to add some impressive skills to your resume? Skillshare is an online learning community with over 15,000 classes in design, business, and more. You can learn everything from logo design to social media marketing and how to get a better picture of your brunch. Matt's into that. Unlimited access to all of our low monthly price, never pay per class again. I've said before, I'm about to start the photography class. It looks incredible. I've had a little bit of photography experience. I have one good friend of mine is a professional photojournalist. He took me out a couple years ago for a day, and it was awesome watching him work. And I'm looking forward to catching up a little bit with my Skillshare class. And it's everything: street photography, mobile photography, and photo editing. Skillshare is now giving my listeners a month of unlimited access absolutely free. Go to Skillshare.com/majority. Start learning today for free. Join 2 million students learning on Skillshare today, absolutely free. Go to Skillshare.com/majority. Get started. Link on our website. Incredible teachers at Skillshare. So, I've said for years that the myth of Paul Ryan as anything other than an alfalfa sociopath is just that, a myth. He's not a master of policy. He's not an intellectual. He's certainly someone who does not possess basic compassion, empathy, or human decency. And what happened, as we know, was that he went along with the rest of the Republican caucus. He said, we're going to get rid of Obamacare, period. It's easy. They passed repealing Obamacare, I think at least, how many times did they do it in Congress? I don't have the number in front of me. Sorry? Countless times. I mean, at least dozens of times, right?
Like 50.
Like 50 times. So basically, and then of course, comes into place, people realize, oh my God, Obamacare actually, even as messed up as it is, because it still allows private insurance, did sort of improve things, definitely improve things. And now they're going to just get rid of it. That's not going to work. So Paul Ryan went to his wonk room and cooked up something that maybe would even be worse than just repeal. One of the worst, most pathetic, most morally grotesque pieces of legislation in human history. And, you know, conservatives made the same point that we've been making. Why not just repeal it? That's what you've been raving about since the thing was passed. That's what you did when you knew Obama was going to veto it. And now Paul Ryan is making the rounds on the news shows, even as he's totally failed and being humiliated, and rightfully so, for this disgusting piece of legislation. But he wants to pick himself up, dust himself off, and get back to the next projects of giving money to rich people and making people poorer. He was on CNBC. This is just him Friday. This is 2A, rather. Paul Ryan is speaking on Friday at a press conference in Washington, and he's talking about the difference between being an opposition party and a governing party.
This issue had a big difference of opinion, not whether we should repeal and replace Obamacare, but just how we should replace it. And that is the growing pains of governing. We were a 10-year opposition party where being against things was easy to do. You just had to be against it. And now, in 3 months' time, we try to go to a governing party where we actually have to get 216 people to agree with each other on how we do things. And we weren't just quite there today. We will get there, but we weren't there today.
And of course, Paul Ryan had said since the time he assumed leadership as Speaker of the House, that of course the policy agenda of Republicans were set. They were a lean, mean machine. He's been running around at least since 2010 as a policy expert. And of course, this is in contrast to Obamacare, which part of the reason that Obamacare is so problematic and so clunky and so convoluted is that Democrats and wonks on that side had been setting the policy going back at least through 2007. All the major Democratic candidates in that primary supported many aspects of what would later become Obamacare. That's Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Edwards. So they were actually ready and set. Ryan clearly wasn't. And here he is on CNBC actually getting called out there and continuing the spin that they were prepared.
The way I would start this is it's a great expression, and that is the dog chasing the bus. And it's like, God, I want to get there. I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to get there. Finally catches the bus, and it's like, why was I chasing this bus? Do you know what the hell to do with this bus?
Oh, yeah. No, we spent all of 2016 getting ready for the possible opportunity of having unified government in 2017. The House went through the entire exercise.
That was from last December. So there you go. Great prepping and strategy work. Thankfully, he's not that intelligent and not that competent, but there's really no way they could go because there are a tiny handful of right-wing Republicans who recognize for their own political survival that they don't want to completely decimate Medicaid, destroy the benefits of the ACA. And then there is the Freedom Caucus, who has no incentive structure other than to maintain a fanatical agenda. Because look at how they got to Congress in the first place. They said, look, I'm some schmuck used car salesman. I'll go run in a Republican primary. I'll parrot talk radio, and I'm elected. And they know that if they vote for what they call Obamacare Light, some other idiot in their district can run against them for being a sellout. And who will they get checks from? Mercers, Cokes, whoever. So that's the incentive structure. And that's why even as we're saved by some of the most fanatical, dangerous people in America, you should be aware that it literally is your average Rush Limbaugh Breitbart reader that controls the policy apparatus of the United States, along with what many people have started calling Fox News grandpa in the White House. Many people are saying it. I didn't say it. Many people are saying it. I don't know. What do I know? I just know what he tweets.
What do you have against grandpas?
What do you have against grandpas? Well, I like good grandpas, personally. I don't like Fox News grandpas, but that's just me. My grandpas weren't Fox News grandpas. With everything going on in the world, it can be hard to keep up with the latest political moves and perspectives. That's why I love Texture, an app that lets me read trusted sources like Newsweek and Time from all the convenience of my phone, my iPhone, or tablet if you use a tablet. With 200 magazines available, Texture puts an endless supply of in-depth interviews and articles in the palm of your hands. Now, I've mentioned so many times that I keep up with everything from Fast Company to Rolling Stone. I specifically curate authors that I want to follow. I love Matt Taibbi. Even guys that I don't like so much. Jonathan Chait, who I have a love, hate, and bafflement relationship with. Whether it's tech, business, health, entertainment, politics, it's your own curated news and magazine channel. It's a great way to keep up with everything you need, and Texture really does live up to the Netflix of magazines description. Except there's there's actually a better selection on Texture. Once you get past the cream at the top on Netflix, it gets a little wanting. And thanks to Texture's daily recommendations and exclusive interactive features, you can easily pinpoint the articles that you want to read. Plus, Texture is searchable so that you can mark what you like, check out old issues, or view bonus video content seamlessly. Everything from National Geographic to Fast Company and Rolling Stone is available for way less on Texture app, which is selected as one of Apple's top 2016 iPad apps. Texture is normally $9.99 a month, but you can sign up right now at texture.com/majority and get a 14-day free trial. That's 14 days free to try Texture. When you go to texture.com/majority, it's texture.com/majority, and they will put a link on the blog and the show write-up. Are you hiring but don't know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Posting your job in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all of the top job websites, and now you can. ZipRecruiter already has 9 million resumes you can search through on their database. You can add multiple people to your account to make it the most efficient for your team to find the best hire. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post 200 to 200 plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. ZipRecruiter's handy website shows trending career fields, cities, and searches. Find candidates in any city or an industry nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Quickly screen candidates, rate them, hire the right person fast. And if you run into any issues, don't fret. ZipRecruiter's friendly and human support staff is ready to help. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been featured on Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, New York Times, TechCrunch, CBS, and why it's been used by over 1 million businesses. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. And one more time, go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. We will be back with Will Menaker on the Majority Report.
How you doing tonight? I'd like to welcome to the stage the lyrically acclaimed. I like this young man because when he came out with the phrase, he went from ashy to classy. All right. I like that. All right. So everybody in the house, give a warm round of applause for the Notorious B.I.G. The Notorious B.I.G., ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for him, y'all. Never been as broke as me. I like that. When I was young, I had 2 pair of leaves. Besides that, the pinstripes and the gray. The one I wore on Mondays and Wednesdays. While niggas flirt, I'm throwing tigers on my shirt and alligators. You want to see the inside? I see you later. Here come the drama. Oh, that's that with the fake. Wow! Why you punch me in my face? Stay in your place. Play your position. Here come my intuition. Go in this pocket. Rob 'em while his friends watching. Clocking. Here comes respect. His crew's your crew, or they might be next. Look at they man, big man, they never try, so we roll with them, stole with them. I mean loyalty. Put me milks at lunch, the milks with chocolate, the cookies, butter crunch, 88, Oshkosh and blue and white duck. Ask somebody. Know that you keep on, just keep on pressing on. Sky is the limit, you know that you can have what you want, press what you want. Sky is the limit, and you know that you keep on, just keep on pressing on. Sky is the limit, and you know that you can have what you want, be what you want, have what you want, be what you want. I was ashamed, my crew was lame. I had enough heart for most of them, long as I got stuff for most of them. So, even when I was wrong, I got my point across. They depicted me the boss. Of course, my orange box. Welcome back to the Majority Report. I'm Michael Brooks. Joining us now, Will Menaker from Chapo Trap House. Will, how you doing?
Hey, this is Will from Brooklyn, first time, long time. I want to talk about are the Democrats going to get it together, get a good offensive package on single-payer health care? I'll hang up and listen.
That's a great question. You know what, dude? This is going to hurt some people, but when someone says I'm going to hang up and listen, it's music to my ears.
I'm actually going to stay on. I'm going to stay on and discuss this with you.
You know what you should do?
Offer a comment and then a question.
That's what you should do, Will. You should be like, I have about 5 comments and then a question, and I'm going to go in descending order. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wish people did that in real life, actually. I have a question. I'm going to hang up now. Awesome. But anyways, Will, you actually are going to hang out on the phone with me for the next little while. And you and I, it is kind of a first time, long time for us. And we have a lot to discuss, but let's open the door because I think we can kind of get to everything through this angle, right? Which is that, a couple things, significant things happened this past week. We had a Republican own goal on healthcare. They did an Andres Escobar move, and I hope it leads to.
So Paul Bryan suffers the same fate.
Well, that's just what I was going to say, and I hope that everybody should look up Andres Escobar to know what we're talking about. But I hope it results in a similar thing.
Andres Escobar did not deserve that, by the way. Paul Ryan does.
Andres Escobar should have gotten a pass. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. But it's still an illustrative point. So they did the Andres Escobar in healthcare. Then Bernie came out over the weekend and he said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce Medicare for All in the Senate. John Conyers introduces Medicare for All in the House, I think, every term or every year. Peter Welch, who's a congressman from Vermont, is going to back Bernie up. And there's also polling from Gallup that came out in May. And I especially with something like this, when no one's really, other than Bernie in 2016 campaign, no one has come out and consistently sold Medicare for all in any type of sustained way or with any media coverage in the modern political era. It still polls as the most popular health care plan available, according to a Gallup poll in May with 58%, and the least disliked amongst Republicans. So take it from there, Will. Will the Democrats follow the noble old Jew's lead or no?
They almost certainly will not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just predicting, and I ever since the election, I've sort of given up trying to discern augurs of the future in the American political system. But look, I think Bernie is the only Democratic senator who is on record as supporting Medicare for all right now, even though I think 8 out of 10 registered Democratic voters all support it.
Yep.
I mean, that's what I just read this morning, and I sincerely doubt the Democrats will get behind this because basically at the leadership level of the party and at the sort of the intellectual machinery that backs it up, they don't believe in it. They don't believe in it because the people who fund them and pay for their campaigns don't believe in it.
Yeah, no. So those are two really good launching off points that I want to get into you with, right? So number one, I think yes, there's no doubt that part of the reason, and this is the very basic reason that you can't have, at least as American politics is currently constituted, and also just what the Democratic Party is historically. The Democratic Party historically is a broad coalition party. It's not a left party, as you know. It's had everything from corporatists to arch segregationists to labor movement, civil rights movement. It's a convoluted mess. But the basic point is that when you have this much sort of corporate money washing around, it skews the incentive structure. So that's like the sort of basic reason that Democrats can't rally around the sort of corollary agenda in terms of on the left to what Republicans do on the right. But the other reason is that there's still this addiction in the Democratic Party to this, like, they're very partial to complexity and technocracy for its own sake, and a certain kind of like wonkery which is only popular in like a handful of zip codes. And that makes it synchronized with the money and the cultural training. And that's still like what we have to overcome. Because if it was just as simple as the money. You all right, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just looking this up. I just saw this the other day. Someone, it was a clip of Clinton during Hillary Clinton during the campaign,
right,
at one of these voter town halls. And the person asked her the question about her problems with the ACA,
right,
and that she still can't get affordable insurance. And Clinton's response to her was to just keep shopping, right?
Wow.
And that's it. And like that's the central problem with the ACA, and why basically nobody likes it, even though in certain regards it's better than the status quo, is that like the intellectual class behind the Democratic Party, they love markets, they love shopping, and like I think the response to the left is like, I don't want to shop for healthcare.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I want to have healthcare, or rather,
right.
I don't even want to have healthcare. I want to have access to a doctor. Like that's the underlying problem.
Not access,
right?
though, because they've that word means like nothing, because the way the Republicans have been using access, like everyone has access to anything. That doesn't mean anything, right?
Oh,
but
right.
But I get what you're saying. It should just be something that is not even factored into my life. I just want to breathe, have a physician. Pure, like there's no kind of intellectual process behind either of those two things.
And I think an interesting thing to consider about the Republican own goal on repealing Obamacare, and just what an absolute disaster their repeal bill turned out to be, I think is just indicative of the fact that they have no way of repealing Obamacare that is palatable to them in any way, because all of their ideas about healthcare reform are already contained in the ACA, in Obamacare.
Yep.
And like people, the caricature of Obamacare that they were running against essentially doesn't exist. And the people on the left were saying this when Obama was proposing the ACA, is that the idea of these mandates and insurance exchanges, this was something concocted in the Heritage Foundation years ago. This is what Romney did.
Yep.
This was like the jewel of conservative healthcare reform, just writ large on a country rather than on a state-by-state basis. So they really have nothing to offer in its place. I mean, that it'll satisfy anything. I mean, I think basically the only thing that saved us now, similar to Social Security privatization when Obama was president, is just how crazy the House Freedom Caucus really is.
Yes.
Like, they don't believe that people should have health insurance if they can't afford it.
Well, you have like Rand Paul being like, I don't understand. You could just get rid of it, and then people can read Ayn Rand. What's the problem? And it's
that
the
Constitution.
The Constitution.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that there should be a bill that says 3 really simple things. I will provide, and no Dominicans can practice ophthalmology, and that'll be notarized.
And the ACA was already a very right-wing take on how to, fix America, I'm putting that in quotation marks, healthcare system. But I think like the extent to which it was co-opted by the liberal sort of policy wonk intelligentsia is also very telling. Like if you take the example of someone like Ezra Klein, for instance, who started out as, a healthcare policy wonk whose big issue was single payer, right? And then as the ACA rollout happened, he immediately sort of went back on all of his previous writing about how, single payer would be the, sane and equitable way of reforming healthcare, to all this new stuff about how the ACA was really great because of all this. You can just, sign on and, look at where you, fit on all these Excel sheets.
Do you remember?
I highly recommend actually Seth Ackerman's big article in Jacobin about this conversion that took place with Ezra Klein vis-a-vis healthcare. It's very telling.
Oh, okay, definitely. I remember that was a great piece, and I also remember what they were calling it when the Obama administration first got in, because this is a little. I mean, I think you and I are probably similar ages, and I remember right when the Obama administration was coming in. I don't remember the exact time, but the first iPhone was coming out, and it was like in the same way that in the 1980s, the sort of intellectual predecessors of the modern, whatever we're calling them, third way, center right, corporatist Democrats, they called themselves Atari Democrats because the video game was the future and it showed how kind of with it they were. There was this whole terminology of iPhone government and this notion that, that's the way it should work. Everything should just be this, this pocket thing, and then that you as an individual rational consumer or as an individual irrational person, because the nudge thing was popular then too. It was like, oh, well, you can't just sort of like, ban a pollutant. You need to, jigger some incredibly convoluted system to discourage its use, right? Which, of course, was
exactly.
So that whole kind of thing was really, really, and it was culturally valorized, right? Like in everything from Homeland to, obviously to tech press, this idea that this sort of cleverness for cleverness sake was something that was innately redemptive from the Bush era. And then we have what happened now, which is that we've elected a complete belligerent moron president. And the only person that is able to just sort of provide that steady contrast is a pure, muscular, and very, not radical, but a clearly social democratic critique. Because when you do a social democratic critique, then you can put capitalism into play. And when you put capitalism into play, then you can make a logical counter-argument to all this other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be really said enough that, like, Trumpism exists because of the savage inequalities and cruelties created by neoliberal economics. And it's going to keep going on, and it's going to keep getting worse until somebody decides until we get rid of basically everyone in the Democratic Party, all of the hucksters and pundits and politicians and flunkies who keep doubling down on this or are still wedded to this idea that, markets are the best medium for democratic reform and are a means of political consent, basically.
Yeah. I mean, well, how do you think, and that gets back to the original question in some ways, because it's like, if it was just as simple as convincing people that are like good, proper, cynical political operatives, like, this is where the numbers are, this is where things are going, then you would see certain people be like, okay, I'm Medicare for all. What's my small donor strategy, right? Like, even if it was disingenuous. But there's clearly still a lot of like, there was a phrase, I forget who coined it, but sometime during the financial crisis, an economist called it cognitive capture, to make the point that, of course, there's massive corruption on Wall Street and campaign contributions that led to deregulation, but there's also a lot of people that believe this stuff. So, like, what's the process of like deprogramming? Like, like how do we actually do this?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, clearly the voters are there.
Right.
I think, Medicare for all is a broadly popular policy that in any sort of sane political coalition, like I said, the Democrats would be united as an entire, like at a time when the Republicans were literally just tripped over themselves trying to take away health care from like millions and millions of people, would be coming out right now and saying, we're the party that's going to give Medicare for all. Everyone's going to be covered. And it's not going to be some ridiculous thing where you have to go to a website and shop around for what market suits you the best or what plan you can get. Like, no, Like this is our policy. This is what we stand for as a party. This is what we're going to deliver. Even if it's unrealistic at the current moment, they can at least put the marker down.
Right.
But like you said, I think the leadership of the party it doesn't believe in it. I think it's because they're captured by, not just lobbyists or money. I think they're captured ideologically by the idea that health insurance companies are good, or that we should have them to begin with. Which is that's the end goal as far as I'm concerned, is we get rid of all health insurance companies. They have no reason to exist
parasites.
whatsoever. They're complete middlemen. They provide absolutely nothing of value at all. They just profit off sickness. And I would hold on, let me find this. The American healthcare system is designed on purpose to be as cruel as possible. Like there's no other way to explain it. It's just to make money for this tiny class of people in private industry, at no benefit to anyone. Yeah,
none whatsoever. And then I actually remember, and it's kind of depressing to use this as an example, but actually someone sent this to me recently. But Anthony Weiner of all people was the guy who back in the day made the single payer healthcare argument. And there's this clip of him on with Joe Scarborough. And Anthony Weiner is saying, what do HMOs and insurance companies bring to the table? What is their purpose? What value do they provide? And Scarborough just immediately gets reduced to I'm shocked. Capitalism, man. And Weiner's what do they do?
You'll get to some point about jobs, right? The health insurance industry is providing jobs for the people who have to, stay on the phone all day talking to hundreds of people about why the insurance they pay for won't cover the things that they thought it would.
Exactly. Right.
And so as far as I'm concerned, we could do without those jobs, especially the people at the highest levels of these companies. I'd also recommend the other day in the New York Times in a book review by Angus Deaton, who is a Nobel laureate in economics, talks about backing single payer not because he thinks that it would be the best healthcare system in the world or the best healthcare system possible, but backs it because it would be the most effective way of fighting against basically the American healthcare system is one of the prime drivers of inequality in our country, and it's designed that way.
Right.
It's designed to be a mechanism in which vast sums of wealth are funneled upwards to a tiny, tiny group of people in insurance in pharmaceutical companies.
I'm curious. I guess this is a little bit more of a personal question, but what made you politically pivot out of these sort of neoliberal assumptions that I would assume a lot of us, to some degree, if you're born in certain places, you go to any type of private school or whatever. I could say for me, even though I had those experiences, I grew up very much on the low end of the economic spectrum, and that had a very big impact at how I looked at all this stuff. But I think for other people, it was just sort of if they had any sense of the invasion of Iraq and then the financial crisis, it was how can you be heading into your adulthood thinking, it's like the meme with the dog in the burning building, everything is fine.
Yeah. I've spoken about this before. I think me, for a lot of people, I was in college in 2001 and then the subsequent Iraq war. I grew up thinking of myself as a liberal Democrat, but it was really the Iraq war that turned me away from, the broad main current of American liberalism as just being inadequate to it's not radical enough to deal with the reality that we find ourselves in. But however, there was never any road to Damascus moment for me as far as liberal, neoliberal economics went, because I never really gave a shit about. I never really cared about.
Will, what's your problem, man? Don't come on my show and disrespect it. How dare you?
I'm sorry, man. I'm used to the pod format.
I know.
No, it's I never cared about.
What the fuck?
I never wanted I never liked looking at graphs or numbers or thinking about money at all. So all of this was just voodoo to me to begin with. Right. Whenever anyone just started talking about, it's economics 101 or just supply and demand or jobs or anything, my eyes would just glaze over. My vision of the world is one in which people, had more free time away from jobs, right? my idea of freedom is the time that you spend away from work. So
Right.
I never really trusted or believed in anything that valorized, jobs or corporations or, work, basically.
And you didn't, and your idea of the sort of free time that you got when you weren't working wasn't like, I think I'm going to go sit back with some decaf espresso and curl up in front of a healthcare price comparison website and just fucking see where it goes for a couple of hours.
I'm going to crack an IPA and just look at some charts and graphs about, what's the most affordable healthcare plan for me? I mean, I just regard that, in the wealthiest country on earth, one of the things we should pay taxes for is that so people can go to a hospital and maybe just pay, a $50 or $60 copay, or just have medicine if they need it.
Yeah, it seems kind of
what's all this other extra stuff? I don't get it. And even I saw in the National Review the other day, some guy arguing from the complete opposite end of the spectrum was basically the concept of insurance doesn't work for healthcare, or it's dumb that health insurance exists in the first place. And obviously he's coming at it from a completely different conclusion. But I have to say, I happen to agree. I don't think health insurance is like auto insurance, for instance. You don't have to own a car technically, and it makes sense that you should be required to have insurance for a car.
Right.
But I think the entire concept of health insurance is dumb, and we should get rid of it.
Yeah, and the thing that always strikes me is on an anecdotal level is we always make the point, and there's no problem making this point, which is, like you said, this is the wealthiest country on earth. Any other comparable country in terms of affluence and resources ensures universal health care. But, on the other hand, I remember I was spending a lot of time or some time in Trinidad a couple of years ago. And I remember, and the person I was staying with, she was like, yeah, I mean, she was a physician. She's like, yeah, there's no, we have universal health care here. In Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, if anything happens, it didn't even occur to me, actually. But it's not, the point is, it's not just France and the UK. This is any place that has put anything together has a universal system. And I think that it's so important because I think that this is the sort of structural disadvantage of even center-left politics in the United States. Because from my perspective, Bernie is center-left by any rational understanding of politics.
He's a New Deal Democrat. He calls himself a socialist, which is fine, and I'm all for mainstreaming socialism in our American political vernacular. But yeah, he is what would have been considered a standard liberal Democrat 30 or 40 years ago.
And I consider European social democrats moderates and centrists, right? This is just basic bare minimum of organizing a decent society. But even as moderate as he is, the willingness to, as we're saying, when you put Medicare for all on the table, when you say certain things should not be governed by markets, you're encroaching on the other team's territory. And then what happened with this sort of wonk and technocracy culture was that you sort of are making these very limited arguments for a social safety net. But anytime you reduce us to just economic actors, you're fundamentally playing on terrain that's never going to favor even the most moderate center-left politics because the logic is always going to be on the other side.
The other thing with this wonk ideology, or the culture and vision of wonks, is that they hate anything that any sort of program or benefit that's universal.
Yep.
Right. Everything has to be means tested, and everyone has to fall in some sort of economic strata or tranche, and then
now even moral means testing.
Your monthly income and divided by your education level, and it's just everything has to go through these incredibly complex equations. When it's just that's why people don't like all of these reforms and policies because it's just too complicated. People don't have the time or inclination, nor should they, to figure this all out. Universal programs are the best, even if. First of all, public education is a universal program. No one's complaining that rich people can send their children to public schools, right? Or, maybe they are now. I don't know.
Yeah, but by the way, it's great when they do. It's great when they do. I mean, when any
absolutely.
kind of system but puts people in an egalitarian experience has massive ancillary benefits.
Yeah, and it's like, even if programs that everybody benefit from creates a sense of social solidarity, and I think that cuts against wonk ideology, because I think they take economics seriously as a science and not just another branch of the humanities.
Right.
They really believe in economics as like an accurate predictor or model for describing human behavior. And as such, they really think that people exist as these kind of atomized, rational actors. And that society is just like a big system in which individuals are just nodes. And it's about just sort of tweaking everything just right. So to them, universal programs are just almost obscene, because they are, it's like, using a hammer to kill an ant or something like that.
Yeah.
But in actuality, it's just like they are like the simplest and most effective way for, meeting the needs of everyone in a society, I think. Especially one as wealthy as ours. Like, I was seeing, obviously, like, Twitter and online has a very distorting view of, who's really talking about these things and what their opinions really are.
Right.
So, like, when you see these, like, ridiculous, like, I don't know how to describe them, Hillary people, for lack of a better word, I think that's a very tiny minority. I do not think they represent anything close to the majority of average Democratic voters.
There's no way that they I mean, that, like, my grand... Yeah. Go ahead.
The extent to which that they have become so adept at parroting right-wing talking points to defend the rotten state of the current Democratic Party against any kind of populist left insurgency is astonishing. Like, I saw someone the other day making the argument that, to counter the argument that, well, look at Canada. Why can't we have a healthcare system like Canada?
Right. They're
like, oh, well, Canada is a country of 40 million people. America is a country of 320 million people. And it's like,
that's like the oldest.
Reason it would work better in America.
Right.
And well, it is the oldest, most debunked talking points possible, and they will deal from that deck every single time, because I don't know, these people are essentially right-wing in most of their beliefs.
I think they have like they're pseudo-woke neoliberals. I mean, they're people
exactly.
who want...
They just want better representation of women and minorities at like the highest levels of society.
Which, if the choice is between, savage capital run by all straight white guys versus savage capital run by a broad base of people, I'll pick the latter. But if that's the extent of our politics, our world's going to end. I mean,
that's the Sophie's choice. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, but literally, like, we are not going to survive as a planet and as a species. Like, I'm not even being dramatic. Like, the science is there. It's not going to happen. And incidentally, it's the same argument I make before, which is that when you're playing on that terrain, it's still going to favor like the ancient, the most sort of ancient and brutal forms of power structure, which you're seeing, right now. We're back to, we have an AG who was too racist for 1980s America. But, being that as it may, Will, before we sign off, I do have one more question for you. I want to remind everybody to look up Andres Escobar, very important part of this conversation. And when it finally does happen, do you want Cuban, Chinese, German Social Democratic, or Cambodian for our revolution?
Cambodian, definitely, because that way I could kill every wonk who wears glasses and lanyard in D.C.
That's kind of what I was thinking, although I prefer the...
That's a joke, people. The Khmer Rouge was bad. I would look a version of the Khmer Rouge where instead of death camps, I could just wedgie everyone with a lanyard in D.C.
Maybe a version of the Khmer Rouge that would be like Mandela boot camp on Dave Chappelle. Like, listen, you little bitch. Do you remember that sketch?
I want to wedgie them and shoot them with super soakers. I don't actually want to kill them.
No, yes. Well, that's how soft we've all become.
I know, exactly. This is why I'm not a real socialist. This is why all the tankies hate me.
I know. The tankies hate me too. But I got to tell you, man, when I read the summaries of Ryan's healthcare proposal, I definitely was like, I mean, not Cambodian, obviously, but the Cuban one, I think we're going to need to do a serious deep dive back into that and not be so quick to, condemn,
yeah. No, I've been thinking a lot lately. Like, there are aspects of the Cultural Revolution that I find appealing at this current moment.
You want to stand in a circle with me and some other people and just like berate Matthew Iglesias while he sits on his knees.
Yeah, I want a struggle section. I want a struggle session with the masthead of Vox.com.
The struggle session with the MSNBC lineup. We just have them in a room.
Well, actually, that's sort of what I do on my show.
That actually is. If you're
interested, kind of how I think of it. Yeah.
Although I think that the Chinese guys were maybe inadvertently more funny than you guys.
Yeah, that's true. But of course, it wouldn't take long until I was on the receiving end of all of that.
Yeah, that's why we got to keep it tight. We're like, ooh, wait a second. I like nice sneakers.
Paul Ryan and the rest of these people is like, I don't want anything like actively, I'm not saying I want to be like, it's sort of a passive aggressive stance. Like,
yes,
if something terrible happens to them, just, randomly, I'm going to laugh about it.
If that's what it was
I'm not advocating violence.
That's what happened with Scalia. I don't wish ill on anybody, but when he did pass away, I put on Hotline Bling. All right.
A little bit of violence. Just like a little bit. Like no one dead or like seriously injured. We don't have to advocate, but I'm okay with it.
All right. Well, there you have it.
A Nerf level of violence.
Nerf level violence.
Right. Yeah.
Something that you can put a soundtrack to, like Richard Spencer.
There you go.
Will Menaker, Chapo Trap House. I know is the first of many conversations. Now that you've finally called in, maybe I'll crash your show one day. It's always fun, man. I appreciate your perspective.
Thanks a lot. Give Sam my best.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, we got to go to the fun half where we will talk about this incursion in Mosul that apparently killed 200 civilians. Marine Le Pen coasting in France, or being well-positioned at the very least. And there's a little bit of a wrinkle in the administration's strategy with Russia and their belligerence towards Iran. I'm going to turn on the IMs. The phone lines will be open.
Just so nobody gets afraid, though, Le Pen isn't leading in France.
She's not leading. And another thing that's important to note about her, and this in no way, she's disgusting, and I certainly don't want her to win. But the problem that's going to happen in France, what it looks like, is France has a good socialist candidate. And it looks like he's not going to make it to the runoff. And you're going to have a runoff with a very neoliberal, very right-leaning on economics, new independent candidate against Marine Le Pen, who, unlike Trump, fuses her bigotry and her Islamophobia with some actual basically left economic policies. So that's sort of more the dynamic in France. 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. Subscribe, like, Majority Report, Two Dope Boys and a Podcast. You know the deal. We'll see you in the fun half. For everyone else, bye-bye.